Hi everybody. Thanks for having me here to address the Green Party of Florida. First things before I begin, I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay. It looks like you can, so that's fine. Two things. I'd like to open with a land acknowledgement. So I live in Seattle, and I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. And I'd like to open with a quote and then give you my presentation. It shouldn't take too long. I'll try to be quick as I go through it, but also not read in a way which is difficult to follow along. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Frederick Douglass. With Pride Month approaching and the somber 5-year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting, it's important for us to understand the intersections of conservatism, religion, and the subjugation of minorities within the broader religious paradigm which exists in our country. This year, over 130 anti-transgender bills have been introduced in more than 25 state legislatures, the vast majority of them banning trans kids, especially girls, from participating in organized sports in school, as well as prohibiting or even criminalizing the delivery of gender-affirming health care. One of these bills was North Dakota's HB 1476, which sought, in its own words, to, quote, prohibit the state from creating or enforcing policies that directly or symbolically respect non-secular, self-asserted, sex-based identity narratives or sexual orientation orthodoxy. This long, wordy proposal categorized trans people, transition-related healthcare for minors, same-sex marriage, drag queens, and any other sexual orientation other than hetero as expressions of, quote, a religion called, quote, secular humanism. The logic of HB 1476, however evidently forced, tells us much about how to understand the larger flood of anti-trans bills. Liberals have tended to see these bills as promoting a straightforward form of irrational discrimination towards trans youth that flouts the expert opinion of major medical organizations. More astute critics, meanwhile, have contended that the bills are in a sense not really about trans people at all, but are instead a cruel though somewhat arbitrary effort to raise funds and appeal to the evangelical base of the Republican Party in the run-up to the 2022 midterm elections. In fact, the right-wing proponents of this legislative avalanche have greater ambitions than mere electoral dominance. As HB 1476 shows, this legislative tactic is an attempt to use trans people as a pretext for a broader reformation of civil life and citizenship to advance an authoritarian, Christian state policy on sex and gender. From this vantage point, it shares its strongest affinities with anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, and new Jim Crow-era anti-Black politics. It's also an example of settler colonial logic, since the state's indigenous population would find its two-spirits cultures and practices disestablished under the law. Trans deniers know that they cannot win this debate, and they know that within our party, we have spent our entire existence institutionally affirming the full humanity of transgender individuals. And this has been unequivocal since its foundation in 2000. We voted again in 2018, overwhelmingly by the National Committee, to approve the following statement as an amendment to our current platform, which is, quote, the Green Party recognizes the full civil rights of sexual and gender minorities. The existing Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, age, and disability. We will work to add sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression to the existing Civil Rights Act. Quote, the Green Party will be inclusive of language in local, state, and federal anti-discrimination law that ensures the rights of intersex individuals and prohibits discrimination based on gender identity, characteristics, and expression, as well as on sex, gender, or sexual orientation. We are opposed to non-consenting intersex genital surgery. As you know, HR 5 right now is pending before Congress, which will add all of that to the existing civil rights protections. Colleagues, that's the and I hope that it was concise and not too in the weeds about things, and gives a fairly high view of the sort of religious structure of what's going on here. If you've participated at all in queer politics since the mid 90s in the United States, you'll be familiar with a particular funding group, the American Defense League, which has funded and sponsored all of the same-sex or anti-same-sex lawsuits that happened during the 90s until they lost. They shifted their gears in 2014 to start attacking the transgender community for the same purpose of obviously advancing wedge issues to ensure a Christian religious ethno-state is taken hold. So that's it. That's where we are with that. That's the heart of that matter. Obviously, within our own party, as I mentioned in my presentation, this is a settled issue and has never been a contentious one. It was part of our founding platform and reaffirmed in 2018. We do have an ongoing discussion right now, of course, in our party about this very issue. So that is in some respect why I'm here and speaking to you all now, because some of you are undoubtedly familiar with it. It is a significant challenge for us in terms of social justice and visibility. It's been made public that this is going on, and so it's important for us to have a very positive and constructive approach, which is transparent and concise, which I think we have had so far. We're nearing the end of it all, and I hope that we can resolve this issue within the party shortly and move on to more constructive stuff. To echo a sentiment earlier, this is not what I anticipated my green politics to be about. I live in Washington State. If you're not familiar with some of the things about Washington State, Green Party of Florida, I would very much like your help. There is an orca who's in captivity in Miami. We would very much like that orca to be sent home, to be freed from prison and to be able to rejoin its family here. That's one of the big reasons I got involved in the Green Party of Washington State and active here. Of course, I joined Green Party of the United States as an actual person helping out and doing stuff to help Dr. Stein's campaign. And I ran the Jill Stein for Washington State and Dank Meme Stash. So that was good times on Facebook. So I'm have a lot of stake in this personally, of course. I'm a non-binary trans femme, and that might be a strange combination of words to say, put all together for some folks, but nevertheless, it is how it is. And so I'm happy to answer any questions and take any thing offline too, if you like, or answer them here. And just once again, thanks for having me here today.
Thank you so much for joining us, Margaret and Elizabeth. I greatly appreciate it. Let's open the floor for questions. I do want to say that I have been, to some degree, following what's been going on in the National Committee with Georgia. The situation was, I felt, highly embarrassing during the presidential campaign, and I was very heartened to see the statement put out by the steering committee 4 or 5 days ago. And as a spokesperson for the Green Party of Florida, I can tell you that we 100% stand with you on that statement. There's no question as to whether or not we support trans rights or whether or not we oppose the statements made by some members out of Georgia. And we thank you for taking the time to come out and speak with us. Anyone else want to?
Oh, just thank you. I appreciate it.
Please.
Hi, this is Lizzie, and I want to say I echo those sentiments. I so appreciated your restorative justice Zoom. I learned so much about that situation. I put that link in the chat so that any Greens that are not following can, watch that and understand and upholding our 10 key values. So important. So thank you so much for your time coming with our Florida Greens. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more? Yes.
Well, I just want to thank Margaret, again, for being here. I am normally good at getting in touch with people as soon as I know the time they're supposed to be on. I was a scheduler, for God's sake, for Harry Hawkins. If I didn't know how to do that, then Harry would have been in a lot of trouble. But because of personal issues with the stuff going on with my husband, I actually got to Margaret very late with this. And I was like, oh God, I hope they could do it. And Margaret came through, of course, and it's much appreciated.
We do have one question in the chat. It says, do you have a reaction to the recent Supreme Court case interpreting the term sex in Title VII? I don't know that case, but maybe perhaps you know something of it?
I do, but so I think that strangely enough, and this this shocks me to say this, and I colleagues, these words are about to come out of my mouth, and I promise you that I'm shocked by them before they even happen. So Neil Gorsh seems to be coming out pretty strong on trans rights, which is, as I mentioned, a shocking surprise, because like who would have imagined that? So I think so far the Supreme Court has completely made the correct determinations with regards to sex, and specifically how the civil rights amendments apply to gender expression and gender identity.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Yes, those are surprising words to hear. It agreed party a bit. Neil Gorsuch is right. So I go ahead.
I was just going to say he's right about. He also restored the treaty lands to the native peoples of Oklahoma. So he's been right about two things. I'm shocked, to be fair, but broken clocks, I guess.
We would like to thank you so much for joining us. It is a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for all the great work you and the rest of the steering committee are doing, and you have a wonderful evening.
One quick
feel free to hang it.
Is
sorry.
there somewhere where people can get in touch with you if they were to have more questions?
Oh yeah, of course. So obviously you could send me an email at margaretelizabeth@gp.org, which goes to our official steering committee emails. You can send me one personally at, I know this might be the same email address, except margaretelizabeth@outlook.com. I like to keep it short and simple to make sure you know who you're talking to. Anyway, so yeah, you can contact me at either one of those. If you're and if you're on the national committee, of course, you can contact me through that. And by the way, just as an aside, I had no problems. I did remember, Rose, that you had asked me to come. So I.
Okay, good. Because yes, but I don't like it. I'm very thorough, and I'm having a less than thorough week because most of my energy has gone into screaming at people who keep trying to kill my husband with capitalism.
Fair.
This week has been very devoted to not allowing capitalism to kill my husband. But much appreciated that you were here, and this is who the Green Party is, and this is who we need to be. We have always been. One thing that I just want to raise is that when gay marriage was a controversial issue and it was illegal still, it was a Green mayor in New Paltz, New York, Jason West, who was one of the first people in the nation to just start performing same-sex marriage ceremonies. And he's faced all sorts of legal problems, including threats of arrest for doing this. And I think a judge put an injunction on him doing this, saying that what he was doing was tearing apart the fabric of society. And here we are, and gay marriage is now the law of the land. And guess what? Society's fabric was not torn apart. I mean, it's being torn apart in all sorts of other ways that we've been discussing through this meeting, but people being able to be in loving marriages has not been one of those ways. So we as the Green Party have always been at the forefront of this, and we shall remain at the forefront of queer liberation.
I think so too. I'm really proud of our organization. I'm proud of our history of these things, of our standing really strongly, for our values and our principles, and really not compromising on them. It's easy to do, especially when you're talking about a very small, group of people with who is being targeted. If you're in the majority group, it can be easy to turn your back on that and not look at it and be like, well, it's only a few people. So, it's good to keep our eye on the prize in this regard. And, like as you were mentioning, these same tactics or the same like arguments were brought up back in the 80s too. If you're old enough to remember, when gay people weren't permitted in like locker rooms, right? That was like a whole thing. Lesbians weren't allowed in locker rooms. Gay guys weren't allowed in locker. No queer person in the locker rooms. That was the mantra, because of the kids, I guess. Nevertheless, that obviously wasn't an issue, and so it moved on, and so it went. Now we're finding the same argument being recycled again from the same people, the same actors, the same funding, the same source of money, arguing the same things over and over again. And at some point or another, like I think that you have to realize it's just what they do, right? Like maybe they're evil, I don't know, but they're definitely capitalistic scum and trying to make money off this issue and use it for fundraising and all the rest. So that we should oppose them on every principled level because of that, let alone the human rights stuff. And some of you have been in this fight with me for a long time as allies. Some of you have just gotten into the struggle here and just kind of gotten clued into the whole thing. So before I conclude, I just like to tell you that leave you with a bit of inspiration, if I may. We're the moral arc of the universe spins ever upwards, and we are going to win because we are right and they are stupid.
Right on. Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome, Rose. Thanks, Georgia. I mean, thanks